Good morning. Thank you. Try that again. Good morning. If you can hear me, clap once. No, we're not doing that. All you teachers are loving it, though. Yeah. Good morning. Morning prayer allows us some actual breathing time between service and adult formation. And there are so many of you here today on this rainy day, which is nice. Before we begin and talk about what a title, An Introduction to the Theology of Rowan Williams. I was told the title and the subtitle that I said I wanted to do a class about Rowan Williams, and then I saw this title that appeared. So I'm by no means any type of expert, but we're going to figure this out together today. But let's go ahead. I want to pray before we begin, and then we'll start. Almighty God, thank you so much for the gifts of your church, including people like Rowan Williams and people that teach us more about you and teach us to know that the experiences that we have in life, the darkness that is in our lives, the bright lights that are in our lives, are all a part of this wonderful and hurtful world that we live in. Lord, be with Rowan Williams as he travels to us, and I pray that when he preaches here, he gives us a word of grace. We pray all these things in your Son's holy name. Amen. Okay, so Rowan Williams, like I said, disclaimer here, I am not an expert. I am not an academic. I am a lowly parish priest, and but I am a fan, and that helps. I am a fan, because if you have read anything about Rowan Williams, or if you've listened to interviews that he's given, or if you've heard him preach in other contexts, you know kind of the force that he has within not just the Episcopal Church, but the entire Anglican communion. And we'll talk about kind of some of those terms as we go through too. I remember coming across Rowan Williams first when I was an undergraduate. There was I went to Abilene Christian University, and I was up in the Stanley reading room. I don't know who Stanley is, but I was in his reading room. And like every good Church of Christ university, all of these liturgical Christians are tucked away into one corner. But I went to the dark corners of the library. I unlocked the door. No. And there was a series of sermons, though, that I read, and I really found that he was able to give language to something that I felt like I had not experienced in reading. Reading sermons are funny, but he was able to kind of talk about the journey of following God and the journey of faith that we'll talk about today too, that is this kind of winding thing. And he writes in a way that's kind of winding. It's not always necessarily straightforward. Like any good theologian, like any good priest, he loves his words. He loves using those words and making sure he gets across what he wants to say, but it's not necessarily always the clearest thing. But like reading these sermons touched me. And since then, since that fateful kind of afternoon, I've been a fan. I didn't know who he was before that. So this is a one-off class. I am the placeholder before Alan Jacobs and Philip Jenkins come. So it's good that they're following me. Let's put it that way. But yeah, let's talk about Rowan Williams. First, I want to start with this photo that I have of him. I don't know if any of my coworkers are in the room. I have this photo in my office. Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, while he was Archbishop of Canterbury, he was Archbishop from 2002 to 2012, and this is a photo taken from when he visited the Solomon Islands. Those other two men in kind of the magenta purple, they're also bishops. You can always tell who a bishop is because they'd be wearing this color. And side note, roommate in college was an Episcopalian, wore that same color when presiding Bishop Michael Curry came to Abilene and has a photo with him. It was very bad. You never do that. You never wear the color that the bishop... So never wear this to church. Or wear it when Andy Doyle's coming in November. But so Bishop Rowan Williams here, the Right Reverend Rowan Williams, or while he was Archbishop, the Most Reverend Rowan Williams, Lord Williams of Oystermouth. His friends call him Roro. Don't call him that. In 1990, he was a parish priest first and an academic, but he was elected bishop in Monmouth in 1991, which is a section of Wales, and then elected Archbishop of Wales in 1999, and then in 2002 was announced as Archbishop of Canterbury. He grew up in a Welsh-speaking household. He grew up in Wales. He is the first archbishop, by my reckoning, that is not an Englishman. And it was a very big deal. British tabloids went crazy about it, that his, in some ways, maybe first language is Welsh and not English. He is Cambridge and Oxford educated. Like I said, he worked as a professional academic in writing and in teaching in various colleges and posts. He has written much since getting his kind of terminal degrees in like the late 70s. He has written over history, literary criticism. He has poems that are published. He writes frequently for The Guardian, which is a British news publication. He has a very wide range of things that he writes about. And so, why is he coming to Waco? Why is this man coming across the Atlantic on an outboard motor to Waco? Wouldn't that be cool? He is coming to speak at the Parchment Lecture Series at Baylor in October. And the invitation that was extended to him through St. Albans was, could we please have you come and preach at Choral Evensong service as well here? And he said yes. And so there's another question I have here. Why won't my priests stop talking about him? Because he is a big deal. So the Archbishop of Canterbury is the highest clerical office that you can hold within the Church of England and serves as this unifying figurehead for the whole Anglican communion, which you can see here. He is a beloved preacher and teacher as well. So I know this map is small, and the Episcopal crest is the one on the left, so kind of close to the United States. And this is the Anglican Church of Australia here. Eugene wasn't going to be here, but I didn't put New Zealand on there. Basically, the Anglican Communion, though, is this big, large family of churches that exists across the globe. And one way to kind of think about it is the Anglican Church, or the Church of England, basically everywhere that the British colonized, churches would pop up as well. And so we have all of these places around our world that the British colonized, and when they built churches, they are still kind of connected to each other loosely, primarily through our prayer book, primarily through the prayer book that is the 1662 prayer book, which is the one for official use in England. All of the leaders of these churches will meet frequently, and the Archbishop of Canterbury in England, in Canterbury, is the first among equals, among all of the leaders of the Anglican Communion. So it's kind of like big umbrella, and then we have the Episcopal Church, the Anglican Church of Canada, we have all sorts of different Anglican denominations relating to countries. We pray every week for the Diocese of Southern Malawi, which is like down here. And we pray for them every single week, and they also have a bishop. They have so our presiding bishop is named Sean Rowe. So we have a presiding bishop. We don't have an archbishop, and part of that is because we're Americans and we don't want to do what they're doing. That is a big part of it. I'm not kidding there. I am not kidding. But he is the primate of the Episcopal Church, not primate. Jokes write themselves. But the Archbishop of Canterbury is the primate of the Church of England. And they will gather as well. So these are kind of some unifying forces that keep the church kind of together. Because as you probably know, folks that live in other parts of the world don't think the same way that you think. And they don't think the same way that you think, or that I think, about theological issues too. And so bringing people around together at one table is a job that kind of sucks. But that's mainly the job of the Archbishop of Canterbury in many ways. And we'll talk a little more about that. Okay, so I needed to tell you a little bit about bishops, and then I want to read you. I know there's a lot of text, but I'm going to read it, don't worry. This is from a chapter that Rowan Williams wrote that opens a book about Christian ethics. And I want to first start here. One of the major problems in kind of the world today is that we talk past each other and in each other's absence. And even when we speak face to face, there is often a lock of mutual suspicion and deep anxiety. He's talking about coming around and just talking to anyone about anything. There is some mistrust in our society writ large in the Western world. But the body of Christ, he says, requires more than this. It requires, I have suggested, staying alongside, which implies that the most profound service that we can do for each other is to point to Christ, to turn from our confrontation to silence, in silence to the Christ we all try to look at, to say to one another from time to time, hopefully and gently, do you see that? This is how I see him. Can you see him too? Rowan Williams, he became Archbishop of Canterbury in 2002 when issues of gender and sexuality were at the heart of what was tugging at the global Anglican communion in ways that at the time and still today are very, very heavy forces. And so this, though, has much to say not just globally for people, but it has a lot to say about how we interact with one another too. If we go to our Bibles, what Paul is dealing with in the church in Corinth is people that are having to get together and get along in a church. A lot of what you've probably experienced too, somebody at church that you might not get along with, and having to be in communion with each other, having to come to the table with one another is not necessarily always what we would want to do. And so Rowan Williams, I really love this bolded phrase right here, and I think about it a lot. I think about it in committee meetings. I think about it in stewardship meetings. I think about it when we're planning and sending people to seminary, is all of us kind of are gathered around this table, and there's probably something that you really like about the service, or something that you really like about being at church here, or something, and you see Jesus in that, or you've seen Jesus in someone around you. And a lot of what we are trying to do in the best way possible as a Christian witness is to point to that thing and say, I see Jesus here. This is how I see him. Can you see him too? It's this open invitation. Rowan Williams writes often with a kind of inquisitive mind, a very inquisitive mind, where he will ask these questions that are a little more disarming. Instead of going directly to tell you what he wants to say, he will invite question. He will invite some sense of imagination that I really appreciate as well. Okay, so he also, when looking at Rowan Williams' writing, I would say that talking about God does not require specialized vocabulary or an esoteric religious experience. What does this mean? So, you are all here listening to me talk right now. I have gone to seminary. I have done training for theology and that kind of thing. But that does not necessarily mean I want to hear about your prayer lives too. And talking about God, theology, God talk, is not limited to clergy, is not limited, and many of you know this already, and there are other denominations that do this probably a little better than we do in the Episcopal Church. But this is not anti-intellectual, this is not against higher degrees or training or anything like that, but this sums up kind of what Rowan Williams, especially recently, feels about how theology can work. And he's very good at taking, like I said, Oxford-trained, Cambridge-trained, an excellent academic, but most of his writings in recent years have been books that are 80 pages long with questions at the back, big quotes kind of in the middle. And I'm telling you this, these books are not necessarily for specialized folks. He's not writing to theologians that are he is writing to theologians in the academy, telling them to get along with other people and that kind of thing. But he's writing these books as a gift to the church, in my mind. That's how I see it often. Because you probably know this, somebody who's really, really good at their work can often talk about big, complex things in ways that are digestible and in ways that are manageable. And it's a really difficult thing to do. But Rowan Williams does this in my experience. So this is him, Rowan Williams, the theologian, and this is just you can kind of see the eyebrows there. It's good. Let me check my time. So if you are looking for a book on theology, nowadays there are kind of two things going on. If you went to a library at Baylor and got like a book in those deep, dark recesses of that library that's like proper theology, you might be surprised on how like technical it can be these days and how specialized our world can get. And it's good that academics are specializing in certain things. Popular books, though, books that are not always, that are more, you would find in other places or more popular or easier to digest, I would kind of consider they could be about theology, but they're really about spirituality. They're about somebody's experience with God, somebody's prayer experience, somebody's experience when they're having communion or doing like something related to the practice of faith. And so we can kind of think of it as like theology proper, some books, and spirituality, which they often do overlap. And some of our best books in the Christian tradition, some of our best authors are writing about both of these things at the same time, taking their theological understandings of the world and the training that comes along with who God is, who Jesus Christ is, and what that means about me and the people around me, and then also bringing in, this is how I pray, this is how I think about my life. And it's not as whack-a-mole like I'm talking about it now, but I'm trying to get across this idea that it's hard to bring those things together. The person I think that does that the best is St. Augustine of Hippo in his Confessions. It is basically, it's a lot of dense theology, but it also is a lot about how he prays and his struggles and dealing with how to find God. And so, Rowan Williams is a very authentic theologian, and in his expressions of theology and in the way that he talks about God, I can often hear him trying to bring in both of these things at the same time. He's relying on his academic training, but he's also talking about his practices as a Christian and his struggles as a Christian. And so I want to play, there's going to be two little clips from interviews that we're going to watch. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. Robert, there's that mic on your desk. We'll open it up if you have a question after we play some of these things. And so we're going to go through these, and then we'll continue kind of to talk about some of his books. But yeah, let's play this first video. Oh, before you start it, Robert, I'll say this. He is presented the question, kind of what is faith? And it's after the first chapter of this book right here. She'll introduce a little bit of it too. Go ahead, Robert. Please don't play ads.
Hello, my name is Paula Gooder, and I'm in conversation with Rowan Williams about his latest book, Discovering Christianity. We're going to start in the first chapter, which is called What is Faith? So Rowan, in this chapter, we're just thinking about faith and what it means. And I was really captivated by your description of faith as being that which is beyond the measure of what we can think or see. Why do you call it that?
Why we call it faith? I suppose because the word faith originally means something a bit more like trust. A trust that the world is bigger than our own minds and hearts can contain. A trust that there's more to be discovered, and that the journey into discovering this is one in which we're accompanied, guided, you might say, or invited and drawn in. So faith as exploration, I guess, is very much at the center of what I'm trying to say there.
And I think, in a way, what you're touching on in that chapter is that sense that many of us have, is that there is more to the world than what we can see, what we can hear, what we can encounter. Have you had yourself experiences in which you have that sense that there is something beyond?
In very different ways, yes. It's something which, for me, comes through often in music, both listening and performing. It's something which classically comes through with certain kinds of landscape, certain kinds of environment, where you're aware that you're not the focus of it all, but you matter. And that's quite a difficult balance to get, because a lot of our mindset is, or I'm the center of all this, I'm where it all happens. And it's not that your selfhood is cancelled or swallowed up, but just you realize, as you do when you're singing in a choir, it's important that I'm here, but actually this is not all about me.
And what would you say to somebody who said, I've never really had that? Because I think there are some people who really do have that very strong sense of something or someone beyond them, who in Christianity we call God. But I think there are other people who don't have that sense. What would you say to them?
I think I'd want to spend a bit of time with them, exploring those bits of their experience where something like that actually does happen, even if they don't speak in those terms. People who've got experience of sport and art, often if you dig a bit, you'll find there is something there where they've recognized they're part of something bigger. People who maybe through their children have discovered that. Maybe in doing some particular kind of work with others where they've forgotten themselves and been caught up in something more. Even if it's a matter, let's say, of, I don't know, care for somebody, looking after somebody who's seriously ill, responding to a crisis. And looking back, they might say, do you know, I don't quite know where I went in that period, but I was caught up in something. So it doesn't have to be what you might call a standard religious experience, capital R, capital E, but that consciousness that there's more going on and that, as I say, you're not the center of it all.
And
Thank you. So while you're thinking maybe about some of the things he just said, I'll recap. Faith as exploration, being caught up in faith as being caught up in something bigger than yourself, not the focus of it all, but you know that you matter. And then that last question, what would you say to someone who hasn't had this experience? He's basically like, they're wrong. But he doesn't say that. I would want to talk to them more. Okay. Yeah, this resonates for me on a couple levels, but I would love to hear from y'all, maybe even how you think about faith in relation to what he said. Does anyone, I'm opening it up for questions. Good, right here. Thank you, Andy. You've got a mic coming.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, so the one thing that strikes me is connecting with the sermon today about that idea of humility, but not false humility, right? But understanding your role. But the idea that church or your experience with God doesn't have to happen while we're sitting right here on a Sunday morning for an hour. That it moves beyond the walls of the church and can happen in our everyday lives. I teach sports psychology at Baylor, and he's talking about flow there, right?
Yeah.
Being so wrapped up in a moment that could actually also be considered an experience of God or the divine.
Yeah. One thing I really like that Rowan Williams holds on to, and that I heard from you, Andy, is that like the things that we do here, like he thinks they're really important. And I do too, like what happens here on Sundays and what happens around that altar. But to say that God is only at work in one place is kidding ourselves. And that definitely comes through. Anyone else on this? Over here? Mr. Larson?
I was really struck by what he didn't say. He didn't use the words Jesus, Bible, or church.
Jesus, Bible, or church.
In any of that. I was amazed by that. For an archbishop to not mention those things when asked about faith.
Does it strike you as something like he should have used Jesus, Bible?
I was delighted.
Oh, okay, yeah. Did anyone else, and I like hearing that perspective. Does anyone else catch that as well? Did that kind of come up or bubble up? Okay, good. Were you wanting that to happen, or were you okay with it? Okay, you're okay with it happening. I think, too, like thinking about his context. In England, religiosity is lower than it is in the United States even. So I feel like oftentimes, and in these interviews, and I comb through many of them, the way that Rowan Williams writes, wanting to sit down and talk to someone more about who Jesus is and who the church is not often the same way that we would do here in the Bible Belt, here in our context in Texas. And I also find, like this is what I was talking a little bit about earlier, to be able to talk about these things without saying them specifically is a skill and is not something that's underhanded or he's hiding something. But I think that it speaks to kind of the clarity at which he knows what he wants to say. And I like that a lot. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, another mic. Mike's coming down here too, the MIC, not the MIKE.
Oh, I'm Mike. I'm already here.
Well, it's for my mom who's watching on the live stream. Yeah.
Okay. when he talked about people that don't have faith, I've always analogized it to people that have been out in the war, in the foxhole, and the enemy's shooting at them, and that person who professes to not have any faith or being atheist or what, all of a sudden they have it.
Yeah.
And so when people tell me that they don't have faith, my response to them a lot of times is, you just haven't been in the foxhole. Now, I don't mean you have to be out in a war in a muddy hole, but you haven't been so deep in your life that you have to, the only way out is to display your faith.
Yeah.
And so I was interesting that he said that about the people who don't have faith, because everybody does. They just might not recognize it yet in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. Anna, you want to pass the mic just real quick to Anna? No?
Oh, that was good. I like that he called it trust, too, that's perhaps a
Belief as trust.
belief as trust, because I think faith and belief often sometimes it can feel a little bit bootstrappy of like something you have to kind of do and perform yourself, whereas trust is something that's comes out of relationship and is something that comes through investigation and work.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen by accident.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. I like Emily Dickinson has a very tiny poem called where it goes, faith is a fine invention for gentlemen who see, and see is in quotes, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency. And I like that there's like, that perhaps trust is actually something that's investigated and has a curiosity associated with it.
Yeah. Good. We'll go one more. Yes. Thank you.
I was just thinking about what he said about music.
Yeah.
And those moments, and we used to call them in church moments closest to Christ. It's what happens to your heart, maybe sometimes when you're singing, and it's where God just touches your heart. And we had a priest here one time that he said, and then you know that you know that you know. And so I thought about that, because it happens maybe in music, maybe when you're seeing a beautiful piece of art, and then all of a sudden God touches your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. I want to play this other part of an interview as well, and hear comments from y'all. He's kind of talking about similar things here. What is belief? And then he gets into another question. This is at a conference, and Robert, you can go ahead and play it.
Most of us are helped, I think, by having a kind of shape into which we can put our experiences. Doesn't mean that it's a mindless repetition of habit, but I think trying to cope with especially very significant experiences, both celebration and loss and trauma, trying to cope with those just on your individual resources is quite hard work.
Right.
And I think part of the importance of ritual is, well, there's something I can do, there's something I can latch onto and kind of hook myself onto something solid for the bumpy ride, you know? So it strikes me as very interesting that even in a society which is not particularly religious, as ours now isn't, people will still want to invent some rituals and revive some rituals, even if it's a matter of putting flowers at the site of a road accident, which is the example that's often used. I don't remember that when I was a child.
Right.
Nothing like that.
Interesting.
No, this is I think, 80s and after development. As we've got more alienated from some forms of traditional ritual, we've kind of quietly invented some new ones. And when you think of all the piles of teddy bears outside Buckingham Palace, Princess Diana's death, that's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the need to have something to hang on to, I think.
Okay,
shape.
so as you mentioned, this, that we don't live in the most religiously orientated society. I mean, how do you see the church's role in keeping up those traditions, keeping up those frameworks for people to latch their experiences to?
Some people, I believe, will always want to belong to the church. They will be convinced that that is how reality is. That's where they want to live. That's where they want to belong. That's where I'm coming from. Others will say, I'm not quite sure about whether that's it or whether I want to live there, but I'm quite grateful that there are some structures to slip into from time to time, that somebody's thought about the words to say at these moments, rather than just leaving it to me.
I would add, over a number of years.
Over a number of years. And I like the idea that in some ways the church is there partly to be an open door for people to find something of that.
Right.
So I think in a in an ideal situation, they're not universal, but in an ideal situation, the presence of a church in a community is a way of saying, look, there is somewhere to take some of these important moments and some of these difficult emotions. And we won't ask you to sign up to the kind of membership conditions, but we will be there to give a bit of a handhold as time goes on. And I see this at local level. I'm living in Cardiff. Of course, in the last week, we've seen a colossal explosion of frustration and anger in a very deprived community. I suppose about a mile from where we live and part of the same parochial family.
Right.
And it's interesting that, unsurprisingly, the parish priest there has stepped forward and opened the church and been around in the community. Same with Grenfell a couple of years ago.
Yes.
That appalling tragedy. That was an event when people of all faiths, commitments, and none, I think, were quite grateful that there were people there whose job it was just to keep open the door into a bigger frame of reference.
I mean, so Grenfell is an excellent example of where the church...
And moving from that to Canterbury was...
All right. Sorry. Couple things that he mentioned in this interview. The question that came at the beginning was, where's kind of the place for tradition in a society that frequently does not either care or find a lot of value in some of the ways in which we exist as a church or that kind of thing. And you heard him talk a little bit about that. He talked initially about having a shape or a container of something to put our lives into, of something to put like the experiences that we have into, that he was thinking about. And he had something as well that I put the Book of Common Prayer up for this part, that somebody at some point has thought of the words to say. I can't tell you how grateful I am that I get to like read things up here, and then like it's not on me to make anything up with y'all, but that these are prayers that have come to us through centuries and have come to us through groups of people that have met together, that have loved each other and have fought with each other and have tried to point to one another saying, I see Jesus right here, do you see him too? And then they come to us. And so I do want to hear, I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I want to hear from you. Did anything else bubble up kind of from this particular interview? There are a couple things he said that I like, but I want to hear from y'all. Yes.
In the American church, it feels like so much of the conversation is around declining membership, or what's especially in denominational churches. And I thought it was interesting the way he specifically articulated the importance of the open door for people to come in and come out of in not a committed way.
Sure.
And the duality of purpose of the church, of being there for both kind of conditions of life.
Yeah, for the people that are thinking, this is the way that I feel about the world and how I see the world at work. And then other people who will only come on occasion or in these moments where things are really, like people that, I can think about folks that come to a funeral for the first time in an Episcopal church and it really moves them. And it's not necessarily a celebration of life, it's a burial, it's a funeral, but the hope of the resurrection is a big part of that service. We wear the vestments that we would wear on Easter at a funeral. And it's kind of this recognition of what's going on in life, but also I'll still be doing those things, and Aaron will be doing, and St. Albans will still be doing those things, regardless of kind of numbers and metrics and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's good. Anything else from that little interview? Allison Brown, and then Robbie.
Thanks. I teach history of Christianity at Baylor, and a lot of times students are like, why do I have to do this? And some are not Christian, and some are Christian, but I always go back to someone has experienced something you've experienced, right? So wherever they're from, and it could be small, personal, of, okay, you lose a parent, you lose a child. I got someone for you, right? Or I'm living under a dictator, or I'm part of the party in power. I got that for you, right? So we can learn so much from the church. And again, this is not St. Albans is not a church that like rejects the history of Christianity, but some do. And so I do.
I know
I don't.
too. Sorry. Go ahead.
It only started in 1517, right? Just kidding. That was a joke. But to again be curious and to enter into the history of the church and to resource them and to learn from them is such a good posture, again, of humility for us to enter into the history. And again, it can be boring, but it also can be really fascinating too. And they did things wrong too, so we can learn from that too. But
Robbie?
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts from that, but the one that struck me was the value of the parish church being rooted in liturgical tradition because it's not subject to the whims of the clergy at that moment. Yeah. And I think there's value in that because it's proclaiming truth that has more than just sociological utility. And I think that is one thing. I know Bishop Williams knows his audience well, and like that's the nature of the discussion. It's like solidarity in a secular age. Sure. But the real value in that is beyond just like, oh, this provides us something to like feel chummy with one another. Mm-hmm. It's also because it's a proclamation of like God is for you, even when you're not sure of it, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, thanks. All right. We're going to go to the next slide then. Theology of Rowan Williams, and you hear it, and we're good with the mic, Chris, by the way, just letting you know. The theology of Rowan Williams has been described as a journey, kind of meandering. His theology has often been talked about as a good theology for Lent. So good, like when things are dark and penitential, and when he has good things to say about when there are difficulties in life. But this idea of a journey or a path that you're walking down is kind of exemplified in this letter that he got from a Scottish girl, a 6-year-old Scottish girl. Her name is Lulu. And her dad is an atheist. I don't know if he still is, but she wanted to ask a question to her dad about God, and he's like, let me send this letter to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And he responded, and he sent her a letter back. And so I want to read you Lulu's question, and I want to read you Rowan Williams' answer. So her question said this: to God, how did you get invented? I know. So dear Lulu, your dad has sent on your letter and asked if I have any answers, and it's a difficult one, but I think that God might reply a bit like this. Dear Lulu, nobody invented me, but lots of people discovered me and were quite surprised. They discovered me when they looked around at the world and thought that it was really beautiful or really mysterious and wondered where it came from. They discovered me when they were very, very quiet and on their own and felt a sort of peace and love that they hadn't expected. Then they invented ideas about me, some of them sensible and some of them not very sensible. From time to time, I sent them some hints, especially in the life of Jesus, to help them get closer to what I'm really like. But there was nothing and nobody around before me to invent me. Rather, like somebody who writes a story in a book, I started making up the story of the world and eventually invented human beings like you who could ask me awkward questions. And then, this is Rowan Williams writing now, and then he'd send you lots of love and sign off. I know he doesn't usually write letters, so I have to do the best that I can on his behalf. Lots of love from me too, Archbishop Rowan. That's a nice letter. And I think that it exemplifies a couple things. This imaginative kind of spirit that he brings to a question that is, to be able to talk to a 6-year-old about theology is really hard to do. And is not something that you get trained on in seminary, really. You want to be trained on like you want to be around the important people, the professors, the deep, big questions, get invited to talk about the things. And this response to a letter is so pastoral. He has been a parish priest, but it's really imaginative. And just thinking about how would God respond to this child is kind of in my mind, a window into how his mind works when he answers questions of theology, big questions of theology. So I want to talk a bit as we start to wind down in the next couple minutes, and I'll take questions at the end. I want to point out a couple books. These are books all of these books are on the small group reading lists. So if you're in a small group, these are books that maybe your small group has read together or will read together or in the past have talked about. I actually don't know if this one is, but this is new. So I might need to be corrected there. But this book in the middle, Being Christian, is a book that I've used when I was teaching as a chaplain. I can send you these too if you email me. Let me know. I see people taking photos, and that's fine too. But so this book, Being Christian, is just kind of covering the really big basics of things. It's about 80 pages long, baptism, Bible, Eucharist, prayer. And while he does use more language that specifically relates to Christian practices and uses, he kind of like the things that he would hit on in an interview, he drills down a little deeper into, but in an accessible way. And this book is very new. This is his most recent book, Discovering Christianity, a guide for the curious. A lot of the same things are in this book, but it's kind of these lectures and these interviews that he gives that get distilled into how to, like just good introductions to Christianity, but also just good ways to kind of imaginatively think about some of the things that we do every day already, or we do every Sunday already. This was that forbidden book that I found at Abilene Christian University, A Ray of Darkness. It is a collection of sermons from Rowan Williams. There's a couple of these. This was just the first one that I found that I stumbled upon. And it is like reading his sermons. Reading sermons is difficult. I remember Church of Christ kid that I was like, these are short. I would love for my preacher to be preaching this short. 45 minutes, an hour, no. So they're manageable, is what I'm trying to say. And when I often find myself reading sermons or short stories or something when I've got like too much going on in my life, and this is a book I come back to time and time again. Finally, Christian thinking is not safe and it's not easy. This would also be a summation of some of the things that Rowan Williams thinks about Christian belief and about how to be a Christian and about how to follow Jesus around other people. It's not safe and it's not easy. At some point, you might have to interact with someone that you really don't like at church, or somebody says something to you that really is hurtful. Or you are going to church with people who it's probably better that you don't know their political stances and that kind of thing. But we all are here, and we all take communion together, and we are all a part of this body of Christ. And so we expect to be changed when we come to this place. We expect to be changed when we interact with God, even if it's outside of the church. And something that has been changed through Jesus Christ and through our experiences with God. And there is a level kind of thinking about this that puts us in relationship with other people and brings us closer to hopefully loving others and loving God, which on those two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, as Christ said. And so when I see this, Christian thinking is not safe and it's not easy, those are kind of some of the things that comes to mind for me. I will take any type of question now that y'all have, or any curiosity about Rowan Williams coming and visiting in October for the next couple minutes, or any kind of comments, whatever y'all want. Do we have anyone? It's kind of an open mic moment. Yes, Anna. I think he does. Yeah, I'm sure he has to have a comb. I guess like if you're getting long eyebrows, you can pluck them, but trim them maybe. I don't know. I think it's certainly a look. I have one, and I keep it just for no. Al Mellis has a question. If we could bring Al.
Today, and he might not be there anymore, but while he was at Lambeth, there was a Facebook page for his eyebrows.
Oh, wow. Okay. Al said at Lambeth, which is the gathering of all those primates that we were talking about, and all bishops in the Anglican Communion, they came together at Canterbury, and apparently, yes, there was a Facebook page devoted purely just to his eyebrows. So, yeah. Michael Larson has a question back here, and then Jake has one too.
So I might have missed this because we came in a little late, but
Yeah.
This is big that he's coming.
That's right.
What's bringing him?
My charm. No. He is speaking at a lecture series at Baylor during that week. And so we begged and we asked and we threw ourselves at the mercy of his schedulers. And we've invited him to come. So Bishop Doyle will be here for this as well. Bishop Doyle will preside over this service. Rowan Williams will preach. Eugene has some, something really good. You know Eugene. He's got something good. and Rowan Williams will preach, and it will be a good night. It will, still working on this, but I'll tell you all right here, it is probably going to be a ticketed event, meaning you won't pay to come to church, but you'll have to let us know that you're coming, just for the amounts of, like if we're measuring 14 to 15 inches for some person in each pew, which is not, I need more than that, but yeah, if we're just measuring out seats in the church. But that's why he's coming to Waco. He is giving a lecture series at Baylor. Yeah. Yes.
And it looks like you can sign up. I mean, there are 2 times on October 28th at 11 and 4, and October 28th.
Oh, for the lecture series at Baylor. That is correct. Yeah. Yes. I don't have those links, but I know with some good Googling you can find that. Yeah. Yeah. He's giving lectures at Truett or First Baptist. Yeah. I saw someone have a question over here first. I think it was Jake, and then I'll come down to Kathy, and then the folks in the back. Yeah.
We're good. My question's been answered.
Oh, good. Thanks. Kathy.
Are they going to live stream the 29th?
Likely, yes. I would imagine so, that it will be live. She asked if it was going to be live streamed, and I think it will. Yes.
What event was he referencing in the interview?
Yeah, that's good. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a stabbing. There was something that had happened. One of those events I know was a stabbing. Somebody, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like mass casualty event. And then I think the other one was the same thing. Wait, sorry.
It was Grenfell, so it was a fire where a lot of
Oh, yeah.
so a lot of Muslim people died, and it was like in London.
Mm-hmm.
It was the result of very poor policy practices. So it was like a huge,
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Allison. No, you're good. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Is it strange for him to be coming to a Baptist university, or is he pretty reasonable?
Ah. Is it strange that he's coming to a Baptist university? No, it's pretty ecumenical. He's an academic as well, and so the talks that he's giving are on the Creed, the Nicene Creed at 1700, which we'll hear about a little bit from Alan Jacobs the next 2 weeks here, and then Philip Jenkins for 2 weeks after that, and then Alan Jacobs is coming back again to to teach over, I would love to hear that, but to teach on something else related to Emperor Constantine. But so, yeah, it is not odd for him to show up and do lectures. I'm sure he's being well compensated for coming out. It's a part of his like job. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If he's in England, would he speak at evangelical churches? Yes. He is very much an ecumenical kind of figure, and teaches and preaches in other places. One interesting thing about the Church of England, though, is that you will have Church of England churches that look to us like they would be a different denomination. It doesn't look like our practices, but they are all still within the Church of England. So there are Church of England churches where people are speaking in tongues or having a very Pentecostally kind of looking like flavor of church, which we would think that's a little different because it's in a space that looks like our traditional church. But so all of this kind of inhabits, this is all keeping people kind of together at the same table in England as well. Yeah. Any other questions kind of before we wrap it up? Yes?
Just a comment, we've gone past that point.
Uh-huh.
But when he was talking about the church's response to those 2 tragedies,
Yeah.
it was really interesting that, to me, all that he was describing was be with.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything to do, there wasn't, it was just,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what opening the doors meant.
Opening the doors and being with. Yeah. So much of, and you probably know this, so much of ministry, but so much of just being present for someone is answering a phone call or showing up or just standing in the same room with someone. It's kind of, in some ways it's an easy thing to do, and in some ways it's a hard thing to do, but you're exactly right. Like maybe a goal of the church is just to be with the people around us and to be there when they do need something. Yeah, that's an excellent ending comment there too. All right, thank you all for letting me teach. I really appreciate y'all. This is so many people here, but yeah, y'all go ahead, get on out of here, and that's it.